You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe Venosa.
Hi, welcome back to this new episode of Open Agenda. So in this episode, we are going to jump right into the budget issues and specifically the budget discussions that occurred this past week on May 11th at the Government Office Building. With us in the house from Fruitland, Ms. Trish Melvin.
Hello.
Hello again. And Mr. Joe Scafino.
Morning.
Thank you. Also from Salisbury, like me. Now, what we are going to do today, what I was thinking is I'd like to have both Jim Atkins and Joe White come on the show and give us a nice detailed analysis of what they saw, because they were at the budget hearings. They go to every council meeting anyway over the last several years, plus these budget sessions. And it's my understanding that they had some pretty sharp observations about the big things that came up. And one of the things that we've, kind of even talked a little bit about off camera was one of the big issues was this idea of a massive purchase, possibly, or I should say a massive funding allocation for the new Department of Health building on Mount Herman Road. Now, we've talked a little bit about that, Trish, but that struck you as sort of particularly shocking in terms of the possible costs.
Got my attention. Originally this was presented as a turnkey facility for the health department. I think we're finding out there may be elevator issues or roof issues. So I guess my question is, why so many surprises? Why the dollar amount fluctuates up?
Let's let Jim and Joe come on, and they'll give us a better understanding of the specifics of not only that topic and its financial implications, but also some of the other things that came up. And then, if it's okay, I'd like to bring you both back on, and you can get sort of we'll get your reaction from their analysis. Stick around. We'll be right back with Mr. Jim Atkins and Joe White in the next segment of Open Agenda. Welcome back to Open Agenda. So with us now in this segment, we have two obviously well-seasoned observers and analysts of county issues and county budget issues in particular. So Mr. Joe White from Parsonsburg.
Thank you.
And Mr. Jim Atkins from Ardella.
Yes, sir.
So gentlemen, you were both at the first really substantive budget meeting.
Yes.
Work session, open work session that took place at the Government Office Building on Monday, May 11th. And a lot of things were covered.
Well, four particularly.
Okay. So
They broke it down into four departments.
Okay. So for the public, what were those four things?
They covered the sheriff's office.
Okay.
They covered the Salisbury Fire Service Agreement.
Okay.
The volunteer fire funding. And then probably the one that left the most questions was the health department.
Good afternoon, Steve Lake, an Assistant Director of Administration.
Matthew McConaughey, Wacomico County Health Officer.
Pam Olin, Finance Director.
Thank you.
Presented this to you all before. This is the conceptual model for how the Verizon building could be designed. Right now, we're at this stage. We have the conception designed, and we need to progress forward with a engineering study or an engineering design phase. This will give us an idea of a more accurate cost for the building.
There was, jaw-dropping numbers thrown around and renditions and plans and lack of details too.
Well,
It's just standard county.
Okay.
Lack of details on what's happening.
okay. Well, being that it clearly touched a nerve with both of you, maybe we can start with that.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, the thing that stuck out to me most, and I think people should realize this, is one, the county council did not seem very moved to spend the type of money that the health department was proposing. They were throwing numbers out, $120 to $250 per square foot for renovation. But also the county executive herself stated that she could not see herself getting behind this plan. So I don't want to give everybody the impression that we're about to write a check for about $8.5 million, because none of the elected officials that I saw there yesterday seem open to this.
We've done some due diligence, and we've reached out to two area health departments that have recently undergone building transition, one being Dorchester and the other being Talbot. Their total project was from $495,000 all the way up to $16 million.
What's the general idea of the completed project? What's the cost going to be?
That's
Any idea? Ballpark?
It's been estimated somewhere between $100 to $250 a square foot. So it's variable. It really depends on what the design comes back and tells us what's needed. You know, I don't have the expertise, unfortunately, to be able to say with certainty what's needed or what the ultimate cost for that
How many
would be.
square foot is it going to be?
It's 34,000 square feet.
It's
So the
not
high
likely-
number is $8.2 million.
That's correct. That's correct. So
But when
the,
we bought it, it wasn't going to cost hardly anything. Remember? Going to be any state share on this or grants or anything?
There is options for that. Maryland Department of Health has funding available for building construction designs for behavioral health.
So when are you going to get us a number?
we'd have to first proceed with the engineering study, and depending on what route you go as far as the construction, you know, there are several ways we can take a bite of this apple. It could be anywhere from 24 to 36 months. And so what we want to do is not, you know, we're already behind because we want to get the health department out of the Hurdle building as quickly as possible. And so what we're basically looking at is potentially either late 27 or sometime in 2028 until we would be able to move the health department. So we don't want to have any further delays.
But for us to make that decision, and listening to what Matt's saying, 34,000 square feet times either 120 or 200, 3 million may, and we're talking, you know, we're spitballing entirely, but.
So the number that came back to us from our engineer, that their best guesstimate was about $8.5 million.
Okay.
And Dave, you weren't here, but that was a complete different story than we heard when we were talking about buying the building.
I've heard the stories.
Yeah.
In the capital improvement program, there was no mention at all of the Verizon building, not for the next 5 years. There's no mention of the Verizon building. How did it transpire that the budget went to $3 million, the CIP didn't? And usually we look to the CIP to give us some more specific descriptions of our capital projects.
So I believe this was discussed during the CIP process. We purposely did not put this in because we didn't yet have this next estimate on this process.
I understand that, but I've always wondered, by that premise, why do you even bother submitting the CIP if it's not even going to be close to $3 million offset? I mean, that's only one thing.
I'm not going to.
It makes you really wonder as to what significance there is in the CIP.
I'm not going to debate that concept at this moment.
With
So,
all whatever
Council,
changes there might be, are we going to get a list from your offices as far as what amendments there are going to be to the CIP? I'm not worried about the out years, just for 2027.
and so we will make those changes. I have not provided you that list yet because I'm making the assumption that there's going to be additional changes. So I did not make that list at this moment. My intention, there will be a list, and there will be a list that reflects whatever becomes the final capital budget, and that will reflect in the current year numbers of the CIP. The budget is balanced with that capital budget that you see. The budget is balanced with the capital
Excuse me, I thought John just said it wasn't in the CIP.
It's not in the CIP, it's in the capital budget, and the capital budget is reflected in the budget. The CIP does not reflect the capital budget. The capital budget is what funds any capital project. So
I think where that creates a lot of confusion, though, Pam, is the fact, and the reason that we'd like to get the CIP first and then the budget, is the fact that there's no description here. We have 3 million. And there's very little description as to how you can. We had the same problem, I believe, last year. There wasn't even a description of one chair itemized for that 2.7 total. We don't have, we're here again. We have a $3 million request, and yet there's no itemization whatsoever.
we can talk about ranges, $100 to $250, but we can't have somebody give us an itemized list of what they think a building would cost to renovate or what they think it would cost us to build a road, because that company then would be precluded from.
I don't agree with that statement at all.
Well,
but I just disagree with you. It happens every day. We just got we just got a ballpark estimate from Mr. Lakin from a qualified construction person, and you know, that's better than throwing a dart at the wall, no offense, but
Did I just state-
that's acceptable, and those are the folks that.
But I just stated we can get a range. I literally just stated we can get a range. We can't get an itemized list. That is going into what we would have to create for
What I'm answering is that I think what I heard you say was that you cannot have a vendor or a contractor in this case provide an estimate, or they would be precluded from bidding. I've seen that happen thousands of times in my business. It's not uncommon, and it's necessary to have accurate. From my estimation, it's accurate to have accurate estimates that we're working.
I literally said we can get a range. They never told us in that range that $100 is going to buy flooring or walls, but we can get a range. I can't get them to give me anything beyond a range.
The thing is, it's common sense. We vote for this. Say today's the day we're supposed. We vote for this. I walk out this building, I meet someone in the parking lot, and they say, "Oh, you spent $3 million. You approved $3 million for the health department. What's that for?" And what do I say? I have no idea. I don't have a clue. That's just not how business operates. It's not how a county operates, from my perspective.
And I think that's probably what makes it difficult, knowing that, what was anticipated by everybody as far as the cost.
So where does this go? So I think, anytime you're going to do this, and that's the purpose of a 5-year plan with the CIP, is exactly what it's going to cost you each year and what the total expenditures are going to be by the time you're done. This just says $3 million and just let's have at it.
His comment was that the $3 million plus the sale of the building could possibly cover the total cost of the renovation.
$3 million plus the 1.5 estimate for the Hurdle building. Okay, that's 4.5. But the figures that some of these folks is coming up with is talking about 8.5.
We're giving you what I believe.
Top end now. End.
Well, I believe that.
I will tell you, as the executive, I have absolutely no intention of spending $8 million on that building.
Well, you might not have the intentions, but
well,
when he holds up that place board that he's got, and what Mr. Lakin said, hey, we can't do it. We can't use the rooms like they are. We've got to have closed-in rooms and secure and all.
Well, they don't have that now, so I don't think that is necessarily the case. We've been back and forth with this concept, and we actually, when the original monetary figure was given to us, I almost had a heart attack because we had no intention of spending $11 million, 3.3 on the purchase, and then another 8. So we asked Mr. McConaughey to go back and refigure some things to try to bring that cost down. So right now, I know that they want soundproof rooms and all of this stuff. I will tell you, but I am stating that I have no intention on an $8 million plus the 3.3 is $11 million project. We are required to give 4 walls to the health department per COMAR. And so we want it to be a good facility. We want it to be utilized by the people in this county. Having it all in one location was a big benefit. We'll be saving on rent at ES Atkins. We'll no longer be paying rent for those facilities. So we are saving money. But I do very much think that this is a work in progress and there will be some cost cutting because
Mr. Lakin just made the comment that it's not going to work the way it is now with the dividers, or what do they call them? Cubicles. So we're getting mixed messages from you and him now.
Well, I think what's a bit frustrating for me, and this just may be a disagreement within our office, is they're in a Hurdle building with an unusable basement. So right now I feel like this is very much an upgrade, but what the health department has now is functioning. I mean, there are other things that we could use the Verizon building for if worse came to worse. We've talked about potentially a new government building. I am very frustrated with this project because it's not further along than what I had anticipated. And I had put some reliance in people that sort of had disappointed, not naming anybody's names. We do need to figure out what we're going to do. And if that means moving forward with the health department, whether it's in pieces, like as Mr. Lakin said, that's fine. If we want to do it, we'll start with this floor, start with that, however it's going to be. But we do need to do something.
$500,000 on the engineering study. I've had some people tell me who are far more knowledgeable than me about these things that that's a high number. And that, that can be done for considerably less.
For the first year or 2 or 3 years, I guess, that we own this building, we had rental income.
That rental income ended in 2026, fiscal 26.
And that was how much money?
I will have to get you that answer.
It's like, I think
I don't,
54,000 a month for,
I don't have that number. I keep a lot of numbers in my head. I don't
so
keep
where's
that
the
one.
money?
The money went into the general fund to balance the budget of the previous years.
So we didn't put it towards the renovation of the building?
No, we used it to balance the budget.
The director of the health department, the lead, Matt McConaughey, he was really instrumental in 2 years ago in getting this purchase of the Verizon building out on Mount Herman Road. And he is on record as saying that this building is turnkey.
Well, to be fair, so is the executive and a few other officials that were giving testimony.
Yeah, the real estate agent.
And the real estate agent that sold them to him and told them that the roof was in good shape, and then the roof is not in good shape.
So basic clarification question. When that testimony was given 2 years ago about it being turnkey ready, it clearly was not. So basically now it's going to be not just more money than was initially discussed, but way more money. And to your point, it looks as if both the executive branch and legislative branch have serious concerns about that.
I think they do, and again, the problem is, like Joe was saying, with the cost per square foot, you're looking anywhere at the low end, because it's a 34,000 square foot building. You're looking at the low end, $3.4 million at the cheapest way to do it.
In addition to the 3.6.
In addition to the
that we already paid.
3.6. I mean, this is just for renovations.
Right.
You're looking at the high end, you're looking at roughly $8.5 million. So you add that on to the 3.6, so now you're up to a $12 million building. And the county is very gun shy about appropriating this money because of past experiences. President Cannon wants to always, and rightfully so, go back to the Culver Mill Dam that was supposed to cost $600,000 or $700,000 and ended up costing over $3 million.
Yeah, $3.3 million, 5 times.
So and now that they're coming to the council, which I just can't comprehend that they are not coming to the council with a dollar amount. The county always seems to, and I feel like they did the same thing with the Civic Center. They tell them they can have $4 million, just like they say for the health department. But then when the plans come back, the plans are $8 million. Well, okay, it's going to cost us $4 million more than we thought. No, you start cutting things. You start cutting things out and you get it down to where it wants to be. How can you come to a council and ask for money for a building when you don't know what it's going to be? It's a trap. You're almost already at a point where you can't back up.
Yeah.
It's called the fallacy of sunk costs.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, as a conservative, this is the one area that gives me heartburn at night, is that you get yourself into an investment pickle. And sometimes in the private sector, sometimes you cut bait and take your loss and you move on. That's not what we're doing. Not everything matches with public and private.
No, and that was the surprising thing to me yesterday. After surprised at all the numbers and all that, all of a sudden there comes a comment, well, we can sell this building.
But we do need to do something, whether it's, sell it, if that's what we decide to do and keep them put.
The statement that was made is that the county is required by COMAR to give the health department 4 walls.
Which they have on the hurdle.
Which they have.
Yeah.
They're not required to give them bells and whistles.
And the county executive did a good job of reminding the health department. We got to remember in this county, the health department is not truly a county health department. It's a state agency. Yeah. Matthew McConaughey works for the state.
Right.
He does this on behalf of the Wicomico County, but even a lot of their operating budget doesn't come directly from our own coffers.
It comes from the state,
But what are we building here? And then, he tried to draw a link between a health department building that was built in Dorchester County and the other one was, I believe, Talbot County. It was a renovation. The range of renovation was between $500,000 and $16 million. Well, if you're doing comps, that doesn't work. You have data points that make no sense. And so tell me that there's any similarity between $500,000 renovation and a $16 million renovation, and I won't believe you. But there was a rendering. Now, the public, we didn't get to see it. He only showed it up to the council side, so I didn't even get to see it.
And the statement was made that you've seen this before.
Yeah.
I've never seen it before. Yeah. You've never seen it before.
Between the two of us, we haven't missed a meeting.
Yeah. So who's seen this rendering?
But there wasn't even a layout of, well, we're going to buy this many desks, this many chairs, and we don't know if it's going to cost between $3.5 and $8.5 million. It's just like, well, we feel like it's somewhere in that realm. Well, that realm of what? What are we buying? And that was the one question I heard that being asked by multiple council members yesterday. But more importantly, I just want to make it clear. None of the elected officials there yesterday seemed like they're behind this.
Nobody was swallowing that at all. Yeah. No. It was just like, and again, the council went back to, we should have built a building.
Yeah.
From the beginning.
Well,
instead of doing this, because here we are. And, then you get back to one of the selling points, excuse me, back in the day in buying this building was we had, I believe it was 18 months of income.
It was 1.8 million was the total.
Yeah, of rent coming for it.
Yeah.
Well, and that was going to help pay for the remodeling.
Right.
Okay.
Even though it was turnkey ready, according to.
Right. So anyway, that $1.8 million went to general fund.
Yeah.
To balance prior year budgets.
Yeah. Not to help this building. So now the statement is made yesterday, well, when we sell the Hurdle building at $1.6 million, that'll help pay for this. Well, you got all this stuff helping to pay for stuff, but when you get ready to pay for it, all that money isn't there anymore because it was used for something else. Yeah. One of the major things that is worrying to me is the county has roughly $93 million in its fund balance. Okay? Mm-hmm. $93 million is a lot of money. All right? The salaries for the sheriff's department just went up $2 million a year. We're looking probably, realistically, at $4 to $5 million for the health department. You got the water and sewer plan, who God knows what that's going to cost.
In the CIP, they have $15 million listed.
15. You had an article posted yesterday that stated that the new landfill expansion will cost between $12 and $16 million. Well, I guarantee you it'll cost more than $16 million by the time they get it done. So, your $93 million is now all of a sudden
goes down pretty quick.
Yeah.
And we haven't even gotten to where Westmore is probably going to be pushing some underfunded mandates onto this county next year.
Well,
teacher pensions. And we still need a new emergency services building.
Yeah, that was another
911 centers.
$22 million for that.
And we haven't had a discussion about the Board of Education and Maintenance of Effort and the tiered security.
Well, not yet, but it's coming.
But that's going to factor into those costs.
Yes. So I mean, this $93 million is nice to have, but
you're not going to have it for long.
I tell you, you can spend it in a heartbeat, and when your budget increases by 10% roughly each year, and we're at $237 million now on the
proposed budget.
On the proposed budget, So that means next year, if it goes up at the normal rate, it'll be $260 million.
And there's no guarantee that we're going to have the revenue or any kind of way to...
and even when you got to the volunteer fire service side, initially the intent was to flat fund that.
Good segue, by the way.
Well, they're going to get an additional $440,000 total between the 11 volunteer fire departments, about $40,000 each. Mm-hmm. But it was almost a clerical error.
While I was preparing the schedule that you have in front, that is coming down the road, you will note my 27 column does not tie to the 27 numbers that are in here because there is one error in the actual budget. and it can be a decision point for council. So if you look at Department 20 Volunteer Fire, just so you know, there was a decision. We provide a match for $440,000 to the volunteers. It's $40,000 per station. It's related to a capital match for them. That number, that 440 is double counted. So there is $440,000 in the capital and there's $440,000 in operating that it was intended to be cut out of the operating line and left in the capital line. So there is $440,000 of additional operating costs that is not represented on the spreadsheet that I just sent down. I sent down what was intended to be put in the budget, and what got put in the budget is $440,000 higher. So I can answer more questions on that later if council has them on that concept. But there is $440,000 of operating costs.
Budget is still balanced. So
the budget is balanced. It's in there. And it is balanced. So the question becomes is whether or not we maintain that additional $440,000 to the volunteers.
When you start looking at your revenues from the county going up 10%, proposed raises between 5 and sometimes upwards of 20% for certain department heads, and then we're going to flat fund our volunteer fire departments. The math is starting to be very vague and foggy. And then when you see someone like a director of a health department who has a building, who has 4 walls, say, I think we might spend $8.5 million.
Yes.
That should make the hair on the back of everyone's neck stand up. Because what if you end up spending that money for something you already have,
Right.
and then you don't get the thing you need, whether it would be education,
Or whatever.
volunteer fire service, there's so many other things, 911 center. You know, you really start to see where the cracks are.
Yes, and if you could really see the budget, you would see where all the cracks are. When you go on, you go on the website, you will get a 58-page county budget, proposed county budget, 58 pages. Absolutely no detail on anything. The county council is sitting up there, and they have a 3-ring binder that's that thick for the county budget. We have that much that we get to see because, as Pam Olin said last year, when I asked about why the council has a 250-page budget and we have a 50-page budget, the charter says that the executive can present the budget in any manner she sees fit. That's why the public doesn't get this.
We see the roll up.
Yeah,
basically.
so we don't get to see
where the money's going.
Things that the rental cars, the leased vehicles that people who ride in them shouldn't have them because they don't need them for the jobs they do.
Yeah.
How many cell phones the county has, all the expenses in the county.
This is the thing. Okay, so, you guys have both done a great deep dive into at least 2 or 3 of the issues that have come up. But this is like the essence of it, is that if the public doesn't have the basic information about the budget, how the heck are we supposed to know what's going on? And I have to say this: we have the ability to look at the state budget in detail, right, when they print it out. Like, it's a lot of pages. But why is it that in our own Wicomico County, we as taxpayers, as citizens who are funding these things, we don't have access to the very information that we need to understand what's going on?
If that's what the charter says right now, then that's what the charter says. If people want to see that change, then they need to ask for that part of it to be changed. Because look, the one thing we haven't even talked about yet is probably the one thing that's got the most press, and that is the Salisbury City Fire Agreement.
Yeah.
And Mayor Randy Taylor, however you feel about him, stated that if the city is only going to be funded at the $2.3 million that the county executive put in for this year's budget, then they're going to spend the next year helping the county transition to having their own fire service.
And we're just trying to be as gracious, as educative as we can. But you don't get to order a pizza and then tell us how much you're going to pay for it. If you don't want to pay for it, it's fine. We'll help you transition to another model. But this year it ends. This is it. We're going to go 2.7 in July. and then we're going to figure it out from there. But we're not going any further with this. This is the end of the game. And like I said, if we hadn't spent 2 years investing in an education process and being gracious and trying to help you train your budget, we wouldn't feel nearly as animated as we are. But and like I say, we're not mad at anybody. We'll help you transition, but we're not doing it anymore. That's the end of the game.
Now, I'm not of the impression that actually can be done.
Yeah.
I understand enough about fire service to know you can't just give up part of your district.
Yeah.
But I also am not an expert on it.
Yeah.
But if we can't get past whether or not the city of Salisbury is going to get 2.3, 3.4, 4.4, 5.4 million, we need to solve that before we decide if we're going to spend $8.5 million on a building we already have one of.
I could tell you right now, there's plenty of people in Salisbury who would much rather address the fire service agreement than a hypothetical health building that may or may not need.
Now is the time.
Yeah.
We've been talking on this show for 6 months about how this was going to be a hard budget season.
Here it is.
Here it is. And this was just the first of 4 public hearings. Now, you can't speak at them, which is fine. You learn a lot by listening.
Sure.
And that's exactly what I was there yesterday to do. And
Just out of curiosity, how was the turnout as far as public attendance there?
It was four people from the public plus some folks who were presenting who were in and out.
So, except when they got to the fire agreement with, and we had, I think, 6 or 7 of the chiefs or their appointed people there to speak for them.
But these sessions are going to be put on PAC 14, is my understanding.
Yes,
they are. They're being recorded. They're not live.
Okay.
But the next meeting is Friday, May 15th from 3 to 5 in the same building that the council meets in normally, 301. And then there's a wrap-up one on Friday, May 22nd.
Okay.
And there's also regular meetings. So there'll be a meeting Tuesday next week that people can go to public comments and talk about things that they've seen in these hearings.
Wow. Well, speaking of things that will be seen, I think it's important to maybe bring in some other perspectives on this. So now that you guys have done the heavy lifting for us, what I'd like to do is, if I can, is kind of kick both of you out. And I'm going to bring in Ms. Trish Melvin and Mr. Joe Scafino from Salisbury and kind of get their take on what this budget session, or at least what these hearings mean for them as people who live in a municipality, especially.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate the hard work. I'm sure we'll have more conversations about this, but thank you for your time, and thank you for doing the math for us. It's crazy. All right, stick around and we'll be right back with our next segment of Open Agenda. Hi, welcome back to the next segment of Open Agenda. Back with us from Salisbury, Mr. Joe Scafino. Thank you. And from Fruitland, Ms. Trish Melvin.
Hi.
Hi. So both of you live in municipalities, Fruitland and Salisbury respectively. I'm a Salisbury resident myself, but of course the county budget affects all of us. What did you think of the initial deep dive that Mr. White and Mr. Atkins did for us?
I think, my perception, just taking a step back, is there seems to be a lot of fluidity and lack of specificity in general around these larger projects, like even Barron Creek. The numbers are kind of here, there, everywhere from years ago. The health department, the numbers seem to elicit a lot of questions. Civic Center, there's a lot of fluidity surrounding that. Just and I guess that's normal. When you get into these big projects, there's going to be some back and forth, but these are huge differences.
The extent of it is kind of surprising, yeah. Joe, what do you think about that?
Well, I got to the meeting for the Verizon presentation and then the fire presentation. The numbers, the numbers that are being thrown around are so far above what was initially mentioned.
Yeah.
For example, the Verizon building. Months ago, they said something like, it'd be about 2.75 million. Was a number I recalled. Somebody had mentioned about renovations. And as Joe and Jim said, they came up with an $8 million renovation. We could have built a brand new building for less than that. So.
Well, and again, what to me is always the most stunning thing, and again, it's just my perspective, is that the public doesn't really have access to the specifics of the budget in a way that you would hope for. Again, we have a kind of a very brief overview of general trends, but we don't have the specifics of what the departments are actually getting. We don't have line item information. I mean, what do we make of that?
Well, I mean, talk about specifics. When council was presented with an $8 million proposal, council said, "What are we getting for $8 million?" There's no detail. It was just like a pig in a poke. And I mean, to give the county executive some credit, she said, "There's no way I'm signing on to an $8 million thing either." So I honestly don't know what the resolution to that's going to be. But as Jim mentioned, somebody at that table mentioned that we can sell the building. I mean, if we don't want to spend that money, we can sell the building.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It just seems like a lot of surprises are involved with this health department project, which is concerning.
Well, something that's not a surprise is the fire service agreement, because this is always something that is talked about for those that are in the know with city-county politics and budget issues, and that also came up at the meeting.
Right.
You've been following the issue pretty clearly, Joe. So have you, Trish. What did you think about the whole dynamic of the mayor being there and then having the discussion? My understanding was that the chief the fire chief, Chief Rob Frampton, did a pretty good.
I want to mention it because, again, I don't know as much as some people about the volunteer fire departments, but from what Chief Frampton's presentation was an eye opener for me, because he talked about Wycomico County per capita spends $110 per capita on fire and EMS. He compared that to several other counties. One of them spends $180 per capita. Three of them spend over $200,000 per capita. And Talbot County spends over $300 per capita. So it's clear that Wycomico County is underfunding not only Salisbury, but even the volunteer companies. And it needs, people want to talk about public. We get a lot of lip service about how important public safety is and this and that, but they're not funding it properly. And it's clear to me the volunteer fire departments also need a bump up in their budgets. I mean, these guys, they volunteer, they do fundraisers. My understanding is that the money the county gives them really is an operating cost. It's more of a supplement to the money that they raise. So again, there needs to be more serious money dedicated to all the fire and EMS throughout the county, not just Salisbury.
And yet the principal sort of bone of contention is this fire service agreement between the city and the county. And so from your observations, do you think that we're going to make progress on that, or is it going to reach more of a confrontation?
I hope we're going to make progress. I mean, look, we're all in the same boat. Wycomico County is one of the poorer counties. Salisbury is one of the poorer cities. I mean, we don't have a big pot of money anyway, but we need to work together. I mean, there's no way, I don't see how the county can afford to start their own fire department. I mean,
well, even legally, that's been argued that that's not really possible.
Okay, I don't know, but again, it's no matter what, paying Salisbury just their costs is still far cheaper in the long run.
Well, I don't really see any signs of a certain, sudden coming together in agreement on the financial issues. I think historically it's always been an issue.
Yeah.
And what's changed for that to be handled differently?
Well, I don't know, but I do recall, and I believe Joe White had mentioned this earlier, that one of the better ideas that came up from one of the fire chiefs was the idea of changing just the nature of the agreements to 3 years, so that we don't have to have this duel every year, it seems, where come budget season it pits the county and city. And again, I think we all agree the budget situation is only going to get worse in the coming years. So perhaps it's best to come up with some kind of new standardized approach that de-escalates some of this. Thank you for observing things, and again, we will certainly continue it as the budget discussions progress. So thanks for being here.
Sure.
All right. And thank you for watching. So we will be back with a new episode shortly, but thank you for watching this episode of Open Agenda.